This is the interview about the Mummers with Michael Mazzucca, the Irish Italian. He's not actually Irish, he's Italian, but there's a story behind that, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Please tell me, why was your name changed from Mazzucca to Mazzucca?
Well, I was the only, aside from my father, the only Italian in the group, which was mostly Irish people.
Which group were you in?
I was in the Jokers.
The Jokers.
Fancy Brigades.
Ah, they're the Fancies. Now, can you tell me what the Fancies do? What's their function in the Mummers Parade?
There's a few divisions. The Fancies are generally the Fancy Brigades are usually the flashier ones who have the bigger floats, and they usually have better performances.
So there's not the so they're not the they don't strut. Those are the wenches, right?
Yeah,
and
those
the comics.
are the comics.
Now, can you help me break down what exactly all the divisions of the Mummers are? There's the comics.
There's the comics,
which are like wenches. These are people dressed up like clowns. They have like 3-tiered umbrellas. They do a thing called the Mummers strut, which is actually a very popular dance in the 1940s. Then what else is there?
The fancy divisions.
What are the fancy divisions do?
I'm not entirely sure. There are a few groups that are kind of do the same thing as the Fancy Brigades, but they're their own separate division. That's like Golden Crown and a couple of those kind of groups. It's really the same thing. There's just kind of like this weird division there, and the Fancy Brigades, which are usually like the bigger, flashier ones with the giant floats, and that, you know, the top groups there are usually the first place for them is usually a fight between the Jokers, the Vikings, and the Shooting Stars.
I remember that at our high school, the Vikings are right by there, and all the time. For like how many years in a row did they win while we were going to school? Like they won like 3 years in a row. And the Vikings would, every time you'd see, they'd add the year that they had just won to their sign, and we didn't like them because you're a joker. Now, which ones are the Mummers that eventually go inside and they used to televise it? They didn't last year. They had to cut funding because Mayor Nutt has been cutting funding everywhere. You have any thoughts on that?
I think the whole city has thoughts on that, to be honest.
Nobody likes Nutter. No, not even the Mummers. And the Mummers, never mind. The Mummers are a violent bunch. Yeah, let's not get into it. They're all a bunch of gangsters.
Oh my god.
So which ones are the Mummers that go inside and they televise it and they have like the choreographed dancing and it's very flashy and showy for for television? Which ones are they?
That's the Fancy Brigades.
They're the Fancy Brigades. All right. So so they go all the way up to Broad Street into Center City, right?
Yes.
And then do you know where they actually hold the formal dance competitions?
It'd be the convention center.
Right.
They go from, I believe, Broad, Oregon down to, I don't know exactly where they stop, but they just march north until some point.
They're somewhere in the Center City.
And then they take buses down to the convention center.
They take buses?
Yeah, they take buses to Oregon.
Dressed like that?
Oh yeah. No, we rent our own bus.
Oh, all right. Was there any free food involved in this?
Oh, of course, yeah.
A lot?
Well, it's not really free. I mean, the groups are all member-sponsored, so in a way it's not really free, but food is supplied.
Right. So there was a lot of partying going on, though.
Yeah.
Now, my question to you is, I've done some research on the Mummers, and a lot of the Mummers tradition is influenced from a bunch of different backgrounds. A lot of English sort of things, a lot of Caribbean also. There's also a lot of, hold on, I gotta straighten out the camera. There's English, there's Caribbean, there was some Irish in there, Irish Americans especially, different kinds of Northeastern Europeans, and then eventually when Italians came in, they started to add their own influence to it. You as a super Italian, as if it weren't obvious, what was your experience? Was there a lot of other Italians there? Was it multi-ethnic? What was your thoughts on that?
In my group, it was mostly Irish. In fact, I can only think of three or four people in our group who were not Irish, and that includes me and my father, who were the only Italians in the group.
Right.
Hence the nickname.
Mazzucca. Right.
Yeah, so it's mostly Irish, but there's really no strangeness there.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no awkwardness about that. It's just, you know.
So they didn't make it uncomfortable. They just kind of.
No, not at all.
But they made you drink like an Irishman, I bet. So let me ask you. Now, the after parties. This is what I've heard a lot about. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, 2 Street, 2nd Street, we call it 2 Street here in Philadelphia. 2 Street is very heavily populated by Irish. And there's always partying going on then. Every time the Irish have a reason to drink, they go. But especially after all the mummers get done doing their thing, and they're drunk before they get there. They party on until the next day. So it'll be the 2nd day of January before they're done. So have you ever gone to any of these parties?
Not particularly. I really went with the mummers when I was younger. I haven't gone out in more recent years.
Right.
So what they would do is when we would march down 2nd Street, we would all the groups would have their big trucks with these giant speakers blasting music, and the kids in the group would normally ride in the trucks because they didn't feel like walking because they're lazy, and we would just chill in the truck until we got to our own club, at which point we would get off, hang out there, and then go home later in the night with our parents or something like that.
All right. Do you have any particular stories of drunken people?
No, but I used to find particular joy in getting cans of silly string, hiding in the 2nd floor of the club and shooting it to see if I could get it in people's drinks.
Really?
Yeah, that was...
Did you actually get it into any drinks at all?
Oh, yeah.
All the time? Did they even realize?
No.
They just kept drinking?
Sometimes.
That's a mummer for you.
Oh, yeah.
That's an Irishman for you. So, how competitive is it amongst the other divisions of the mummers? Does it get violent?
No, actually, not particularly. I mean, a lot of people say South Philadelphia is a small world.
Right.
Most of the people in the groups are friends with each other. They know each other. They work together, stuff like that. They just happen to be in different groups. Around New Year's, it can get a little tense because, a lot of work goes in. Usually they don't start building floats or anything like that until after Christmas.
Right.
And like I said, a lot of the groups are member-sponsored, so they're putting a lot of their time and a lot of their, a lot of their effort, a lot of their money into this. So, they can get a little riled up about it, but for the most part, it's very sportsmanly. The groups are very friendly towards each other. You'd never have anything like one group sabotaging another group's float or anything like that.
But how could you prove that if they got away with it?
Well.
So everybody, it's a big neighborhood thing. There's no real tension between it. There's no burning of other people's that just happened. There's no burning of other people's floats or sabotage or anything of that nature. There's no violent, very beautifully colored, feathery men violently beating each other in the streets on New Year's?
Not usually.
Not usually? I ask because the original mummers were people that would just go around shooting off pistols and singing and dancing while they were drunk in hopes of getting more alcohol and food, so I guess things really haven't changed that much.
Yeah, they've become a little more civil, that's about it.
You think more? I thought less.
Depends on how you look at it, I suppose.
Maybe if you go to another one of those parties on 2nd Street, you'll find out. Okay, final thoughts for the interview. What do you think about a bunch of men dressing up like women? Go.
I don't know. I mean, if you want to look at the history of it, it's definitely not something that... it's definitely something that you could tell is a mixture of a lot of different cultures.
Right.
The loud music, the eccentric costumes, stuff like that. You can tell it's something that's a culmination of a lot of different cultures, but men dressing up like women, I mean, it's the fun of it. It's New Year's.
It's the fun. Is that a mummer's tradition?
It might be.
maybe they don't even really. I think they care less and less that they're dressed like women as the day goes on.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
drink
it
more and
wouldn't
more.
have really occurred to me. I mean, I was in there mostly when I was younger, like I said.
Right.
I went there from when I was about 3 years old to maybe 13, 14, so.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, then. So thank you very much, Mr. Michael Mazzucca. Thank you for your time. You may take a bow. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. Oh, those mummers, they're so dramatic. And we're out.